Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America. Good morning, Mr. Harley, Andy, Mr. Mike, Craig, God bless. Keith, how are we all doing this morning? Hey, good morning, my friends. How's everyone doing this morning? It's a little bit frosty here in Kingman. Kind of like springtime in Wisconsin. It's down in the low 30s. It's going to warm up pretty good this week. Chamber of Commerce weather be getting up into the 60s and possibly even pushing close to 70 before the end of the week, which is always good. I get kind of cold. I've been a long time since I was up in the North Country, and so when it gets below 80, I start looking for my long underwear. Well, welcome to what I hope is an oasis from news of the never-ending election and the tragedy that's the COVID-19 tsunami. Take a half hour and kind of escape from reality just a tad bit. I think we all need a break from these concerns every once in a while. Are you ready to talk Route 66 and road trips? That is the subject of conversation this morning. And of course, I have the weekly trivia contest, the coffee cup sponsor of the week, and an update or two, and a few little possible surprises, and a couple of plugs from our sponsors this morning. Before I get things rolling, I want to give a shout out to the boys of the road crew for our theme song. I sure am grateful for their contributions, as it does class things up a bit here. And it's definitely better than me trying to, well, it's better than my caterwauling. That doesn't take much. I've been told that my singing voice is akin to a cat with its tail caught in the door. If you need to inspire a road trip or dreams of a road trip, take a listen to the music of the Road Crew at roadcrew66.com. Joe and Woody and Don and the boys there. Good stuff. We'll kick this off this morning with our trivia contest. Whoever comes up with the first right answer wins a copy of Murder and Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66. And I'll even throw in a signature, no charge. That's got to make the book at least half what you pay for it. Okay, ready? Alberta's Hotel was located a few blocks off Route 66 in Springfield. Over the years, it evolved into a full-scale resort that was popular with a wide array of traveling celebrities. But there was something special about her property. What was it that made her hotel unique? First right answer gets a copy of my latest book, Murder and Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66. Okay, we're going to do this a little different this morning. We'll talk about Route 66. We won't get too much into the history, so to speak. We'll talk a little on that. But basically, we're going to have a discussion, if you will, and chime in. We'll answer your questions at the end of the program and share your responses to this. But what I want to do is approach Route 66 from questions that I receive most often. And we'll go from there. The top of the list, the question I'm asked most often, and that I see appearing on Route 66 groups and pages most often, is about the amount of time needed for a Route 66 road trip. My personal answer to that one is, I don't know. I've been traveling this old road since 1959, and since about 1976 on my own. I still find it enjoyable. There always seems to be something new to see, a new place to try pie, or a new place to explore, new people to meet. And of course, there's just something comfortable about the familiar places and a visit with old friends. As an example, my dearest friend and I, a highlight of all of our trips on Route 66 is the Wagon Wheel Motel. Here's a tip for you. Ask for the room with a spa in the room. Can't beat it. Wander out, have a great dinner if they're open hopefully in the post-COVID world. Just down the road a piece to Belmont Winery. Try some of their dogwood wine, a great steak. Come back to the room and relax a bit. But what we really enjoy about the Wagon Wheel is a visit with Connie Eccles in the morning. I run down and pick up some fresh muffins from the Cuba Bakery and Deli on Main Street. And sitting around and chewing the fat, having some conversation with Connie and talking to guests that are discovering the magic of the storied old Route 66. Man, that's just what it's all about. That's neat. I suppose this is a good segue to say that the Wagon Wheel Motel is one of our favorite stops, and it's also a sponsor of this program. But I'm really careful on who I endorse and what I promote. And I don't mind putting my name behind the Wagon Wheel Motel. Good folk, good hospitality, and a Route 66 time capsule to boot. I suggest myself a minimum of 2 weeks for a one-way trip on Route 66. Obviously, it can be done sooner. Hell, just last year, my dearest friend and I left Kingman mid-morning Tuesday after meeting with a tour group here, and I was in Jackson, Michigan for a presentation late on Friday afternoon. Needless to say, I felt like I had died and gone back to driving trucks. There wasn't much time for anything on that run except from a quick meal at places like Lucille's in Weatherford, Oklahoma. Still, I don't recommend rushing this trip. That's what the interstate highway is for. Take your time. A Route 66 adventure is to be savored. Of course, that's my feeling about any two-lane highway odyssey. So, here's a question. For all the veteran Route 66 travelers watching this morning, when people ask you how much time does it take for a Route 66 trip, what is your answer? How much time do you recommend? I mentioned that there's always a new discovery out there. Here's an example. On our fall speaking tour in 2019, I had an opportunity to pay a visit to the Wilson's Creek National Battlefield near Springfield, Missouri. Are any of you familiar with this site? Fought in August 1861, this was the second major battle of the American Civil War, and it was the first major battle fought west of the Mississippi River. Nathan Lyon was the first Union general killed in action. He died in this battle. But the place is it's a really beautiful and a very somber site. There's a scenic 4.9-mile self-guided tour on a paved road with 8 interpretive stops at significant locations associated with the battle. And since I'm a fan of walkabouts, I suggest the trail system. There are 5 trails that vary in length from 1/4 to 3/4 of a mile. Really easy stuff. And if you're a little more ambitious, there's a 7-mile trail system for horseback riding and hiking. And there are living history demonstrations on cannons, loading black powder rifles, things of that nature. And the Ray House is pretty interesting to explore. That dates to the 1850s, and it served as a temporary field hospital for Confederate soldiers following the battle. And that's just an example. I've been traveling this road all these years, and I still find fascinating new things to see. And if you really want to get the most from your Route 66 adventure, don't go myopic. Don't get so narrow-minded you can look down a beer bottle with both eyes. Consider a detour, short ones. You don't have to be big detours, but you can really enhance your Route 66 trip with just a little bit of a detour. It'll really change the adventure, add some spice to it. For example, Merrimack Springs Park. It's just a few miles south of Cuba. Well, it's actually south of Steelville, so it's about 30 miles south of Cuba on State Highway 19. It's a scenic drive, but this place is spectacular, especially with fall colors. It's the water pours from a submerged cave. There's a beautiful hiking trail that goes around the pool. And there's an old mill. It's just a beautiful place. Another great example, especially for travelers in the summer trying to beat the heat. Wallapai Mountain Park is just 12 miles from Kingman, Arizona. It's a paved road, very scenic. It's Wallapai Mountain Park. The best way I can describe it is a pine forested oasis in a sea of desert. And there are miles of hiking trails. There's a nice lodge and restaurant. It's not uncommon to see deer and elk in the parking lot. There's rustic stone cabins built by the CCC, the Citizens Conservation Corps, back in the 1930s. There's an RV park. Pretty impressive, and it's a great way to beat the heat. 15 to 20 degrees cooler in the summer up there on the mountain. Well, for my Route 66 travelers out there, do you have any great detours to suggest? Palo Duro Canyon south of Amarillo would be another one. Diamond Creek out of Peach Springs, the only road where you can drive to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Another topic of discussion among folk planning a Route 66 adventure is, this is a real common thing I get a lot. How do I avoid getting lost? Because Route 66 is, it's broken. It's got a lot of dead ends. It's, truncated alignments. And then there's different alignments. In Illinois, there's two totally distinctly different Route 66 alignments. Arizona, here in western Arizona, the pre-52 alignments, the famous one that goes up through Oatman and St. Greaves Pass. Post-52, it went through Yucca. Basically, it's I-40. So how do you find Route 66 without getting lost? Here's a little thought for you. The most famous highway in America, perhaps the most famous highway in the world, doesn't officially exist. Route 66 was taken off the register and taken off the maps back in around 85. So technically it doesn't exist. You knew that, didn't you? Well, here's a tried and true favorite, and this is something, it really summarizes Route 66. Easy 66 Guide for Travelers by Jerry McClanahan. Even after all these years, I still travel with a copy. And it's it really summarizes Route 66 quite well. Here we live in this modern technological age and electric cars and all these things going on. And one of the most popular guides is something like you would have seen in the 1950s. You can pick this up on Amazon and a lot of visitor centers along the road. And it's really recommended. It's a lot of fun, a lot of trivia notes. And of course, his Jerry's signature artwork, as well as fairly detailed maps. And Jerry will be happy to add an autograph if you stop by his gallery in Chandler, Oklahoma. The problem with this is simple. What if you're on a motorcycle? What if you're traveling by yourself? What happens if your passenger wants to watch and see things and not play navigator? Well, you've heard me talk a lot about Route 66 Navigation app. You can find that at route66navigation.com. They also have a small gift shop and some other things there. But for my money, personally, and I'm fascinated by gadgets, but I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. I still travel with a Rand McNally Atlas, for God's sakes. For my money, aside from something like the excellent self-drive tour option from Gilligan's Route 66 Tours, this app is the hands-down best tool for traveling the road without a guide. Now, COVID-19 kind of set things back a bit, but the developer of this app generally spends at least 4 to 6 weeks every year traveling the highway to ensure the app works and that the app is current. And then he has a network of people along Route 66, such as myself, that continually provide updates on everything from road conditions to business openings and closures. And on top of that, he has an extensive point of interest file. It's been my pleasure to really assist with development of this part of the app. And event organizers are encouraged to provide information about events, and then these are added as well, no charge. Now, the neat thing about this app, too, is many aspects of it are free. You can download it on your phone. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but go to Route 66 Navigation. You download the app. And some parts of this are no charge. For example, you can find places to visit. You can find passport stops, events. All of that is at no charge on using the app. Now, if you want to use this for the travel reports, the maps, the detailed offline, then there is a subscription fee, but it's very minimal. And you can also, another advantage to this is you can, here's the point of interest file. Let's see if I can, well, it's not going to show very well, I'm afraid. You can also pre-program a little of this once you have a subscription and add some things of your own to this to really enhance the trip. It's kind of neat. The developer of this has also created a free ebook about planning a Route 66 trip, and that is available in numerous languages from Route66navigation.com. And if that's not enough, he has created the Mother Road Route 66 Passport. It's an ultimate customizable souvenir. It's got lots of places here where you can take notes, collect autographs from Route 66 celebrities, personalities, people you meet, phone numbers, things of that nature, and a lot of trivia. And it's a companion sort of to the app, and it's an introduction to visitor centers and museums along the road. Participating places like Mother Road Market in Tulsa, you stop and you get a unique stamp for your passport, and you will get a free Mother Road Market tote. Different places along the road, you get a different souvenir for stopping into them. So it's kind of neat. This goes well with this, and you can find all of this on Route66navigation.com. Another question that I am asked often pertains to Route 66 museums. The thing to keep in mind with all of this, you can't see it all. You just can't. So that's what keeps people coming back time and time and time again. Pick and choose. But if you're making just one trip, here's my recommendations. If you want to see just two great Route 66 centered museums, I recommend the Oklahoma Route 66 Museum in Clanton, Oklahoma, and the National Route 66 Museum in Elk City, Oklahoma, which is just down the road from Clanton, a spit and a hop. They're both excellent museums, both excellent gift shops, both sell my books. And as a bonus, the Elk City Museum is actually a complex. There's a rodeo museum, a local museum, area history museum, as well as Route 66. There's also an interesting farm and ranch museum with a lot of hands-on exhibits. Of course, COVID, you got to check your hours, check your times, things of that nature. But it's really pretty interesting. The blacksmithing, different things they have, displays. Now, and museums, like I say, there's some just fascinating ones. Unfortunately, the vacuum cleaner museum in St. James it closed, and believe it or not, that was interesting. It's kind of like the Barbed Wire Museum, Devil's Rope Museum in McLean, Texas. If that doesn't sound like, you just look at it and go, what the hell? It just, trust me, it is a fascinating museum. And I won't spoil the party, but there's a Titanic connection to McLean, Texas, and you can find that at the Devil's Rope Museum in McLean. One of the more overlooked museums, when I'm asked about museums that are really different, standouts, the J.M. Davis Arms and Historical Museum in Claremore, Oklahoma. It has the world's largest collection of firearms. Okay, I know some people aren't big into guns, but this is different. You've got 14th century Chinese hand cannons. You've got experimental guns that were developed by the Germans in World War II. Rifles that shoot around the corners. Guns from all over the world. Odd guns. And guns of famous people. Guns belonging that were used by John Dillinger and Buffalo Bill Cody. But that's only the core of the museum. There's also extensive displays of 19th century music boxes, World War I recruitment posters, German beer steins, John Wayne memorabilia, and much, much more. And when it comes to restaurants, my gosh, you know, my dearest friend and I, unless starvation is imminent, when we travel, we try to avoid chain restaurants and definitely avoid fast food. There's just no need for it. You go to places, I showed pictures yesterday, but like Tally's in Tulsa. Just extraordinary. I mentioned Lucille's. Clanton's Cafe in Venita, Oklahoma. Imagine this little farming town with a cafe that's been one family owned since the 1920s. And oh my gosh, I had some of the best beef stew, fresh beef, fresh vegetables, blackberry cobbler, and a cup of coffee, and for about $15. Good food. Oh, let's try a little bit of shameless self-promotion. So since we're talking about all these great places to eat, things to see, things to do, this is a little book, 100 Things to Do on Route 66 Before You Die. Well, you know, my list of places to see numbers at least 1,000 or more. So consider this my kind of like a top 10 list. There's museums, motels, restaurants, and maybe I should write volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, because my list of places is quite large and changes and grows. But I include in here, we're very curious people when we travel. And, you know, we take in places like the Ariston Cafe, really famous places on Route 66. But we look for unusual places. As an example, you'll find in here Hyder Baba, which is in Pasadena. And this is the Hyder Baba here. It's the Hyder Baba is really unique. It's an authentic Persian cafe. And its name apparently is derived from a poem written by an Iranian poet. The owners express this sentiment on their website. We hope that all of your senses, what you see, what you smell, and of course what you taste, transport you to the foot of our famous mountain, where you can enjoy the simple pleasures of good food and good conversation, where your hearts may be gladdened. This is at in Colorado Boulevard, which is Route 66 in Pasadena. And man, great food, stuff I've never eaten before, and it's become kind of a favorite of ours. And as a bonus, it's just a few blocks from the iconic time capsule, the Saga Motor Hotel in Pasadena, California. This dates back to the 1950s and looks like a stereotypical movie set. In fact, they filmed programs there of a 1950s California motel, towering palm trees, swimming pool, all that stuff. And it's my number one lodging recommendation in the Los Angeles area because the price is relatively reasonable and it's within walking distance of the metro, which will get you everywhere. You can order copies of that book as well as Murder and Mayhem on the Main Street of America, Tales from Bloody 66, on the home page of our website, JimHinckley'sAmerica.com. Unfortunately, I can only offer domestic shipping. And even though my signature isn't worth much on checks, I'll add one to each book. Now that takes us to road trips. Hey, we're running out of time here, but if we've got a few extra minutes, we might run this over. Look, Route 66 is not America's most historic or even its most scenic highway. But it's always, from its inception, had the best press and publicity, even going back into the era of the National Old Trails Road, which is the foundation for Route 66 in the Southwest. And today, in the era of Renaissance, it even has an international fan club. What sets the road apart, what sets Route 66 apart from any other, is the infectious sense of vibrancy, of excitement in the people you meet along the way. This includes travelers as well as business owners. But what about other great drives? Well, I have long had a fascination for the forgotten cousin of Route 66, which is US 6. I have yet to drive it in its entirety from Cape Cod to Bishop, California, or to its original terminus in Long Beach, California. But what I have driven has really piqued my interest. There's lots of small-town time capsules, great old cafes and diners, mom-and-pop motels, historic sites, and interesting museums, such as the Pioneer Village in Minden, Nebraska. That place has to rate near the top of obscure museums, most fascinating museums in the country. Have any of you stopped by, or are you familiar with Pioneer Village? Perhaps we should talk about that one Sunday morning. Oh, I have a long list of other drives that I can really recommend. For example, US 180 from Holbrook, Arizona to Deming, New Mexico, through Alpine, Springerville, down the other side through Glenwood, these charming little towns, and down through wonderful Silver City, New Mexico. US 12 across southern Michigan. Parts of this was the old Sauk Trail, a Native American trail that was then used by British and French explorers. And you'll find things like Walker Tavern that date back to the 1840s, 1850s. Surprises like Jonesville, Michigan, home of the Deal Automobile Company. There's a Deal automobile sitting in the front window of the City Hall, and the old factory is still there. It's been turned into apartments. That was a neat discovery. Great restaurants there. US 550 through Colorado through the south. That's a great drive. US 93 from Las Vegas to Canada. A bit desolate in spots, but boy, I'll tell you, that's a beautiful drive, especially if you love desert country. US 2, all the way across northern Michigan, the UP, through Wisconsin, Minnesota, and all the way west to Seattle. That is a spectacular drive. Really, really highly recommended. What do you think? Should that be my next book? Jim Hinckley's America, Great Drives. So, what are some of your favorite two-lane drives? Care to share with us? Well, let's kind of get to our coffee cup. Our coffee mug sponsor of the week is the iconic Blue Swallow Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico. Dating to 1939, the Blue Swallow is a gem, a real treasure. It's a living time capsule wrapped in modern amenities. And to be honest, if you've never taken a Route 66 trip, I don't think a Route 66 adventure can be considered complete without a night at the wonderful Blue Swallow Motel. Okay, here's my thought for the day. I wrote an article. This will be published on Monday with Motoring NZ. I had been writing about Charles Kettering. I did a little bit of research. He's the fellow I talked about last week that invented so many different things like the electric starter for the automobile. He had a great quote that's kind of timely. I thought I'd share this as my thought. In America, we can say what we think. Even if we can't think, we can say it anyhow. Keep that in mind when you're perusing Facebook. Doesn't that sum that up quite well? Hey, I want to give a shout out and a thank you to everyone who sent notes about vintage dealerships on Route 66. We were talking about that last week. I've been keeping track of what you've been sending me, and you can bet money on the next trip on Route 66. I'll be making a few extra stops and trying to document some of these with photographs. Well, we have pushed this right to the 30-minute limit, and sure don't want to wear out my welcome by beating my gums too much here. So let's see if I can answer any questions you might have. Good morning, Susan. How are you doing today? Mr. Anderson, I'm doing pretty good as can be expected. Nolan, good morning, sir. Well, it's Andy, Route 66 is kind of a diagonal. Basically, when the U.S. highway system was set up, it was supposed to be east and west highways would be even numbers, and north and south were odd numbers. And Route 66 was a little bit different. It was more of a, if you're going from Chicago to California, it's kind of a southwest situation. But a little trivia for you. Route 66, when the system was originally set up, was mapped and signed, or atlases and maps put out, showing it as US 60. And then with a political compromise, it became Route 66 in 1926. The hotel in the Green Book, I don't think the Saga was listed in the Green Book. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. You're talking about the trivia contest. I'm not sure, but I would bet money. I would bet money that it was listed in the Green Book. So you're close, Mark. Yeah, it starts in Chicago and ends in Santa Monica. Nolan, that's a great idea. Do Route 66 in sections. Some of the tour companies do that. They'll offer a really extensive 2-week trip from Chicago, say, to Oklahoma City, and then they offer as a secondary option a 2-week trip to Oklahoma City to Los Angeles. Mike, isn't it amazing how much time you can expend exploring this road? And people ask, why do you keep coming back to Route 66? It's infectious. It is absolutely infectious. The people is really the key. Not that the people aren't good on these other roads, US 6 and different things, but there's just something about it. It's a sense of community, a sense of family almost on Route 66. Yeah, Mark, I agree. I still travel with Jerry's book on the dash when I travel. Mr. William, good morning from Iowa. Bill, I am glad to hear that you have that app, and I'm glad that it works for you. Well, that's an interesting question. How long have you lived on Route 66? Well, I moved west here in summer of 1966. And I've lived pretty much most of the time, except for a little time in Michigan. But since 66, off and on. Tech difficulties? I don't know of any. I haven't seen anything pop up. Ian, you're exactly right. The Devil's Rope Museum is really, really good. Yeah, the archive section for articles in newspapers. There's a website, subscription-based. I think it's like $70 a year. I use that a lot for a website, and I am surprised on the obscure newspapers they have access to. Like the Glen Rio newspaper, the Ghost Town of Glen Rio had a paper, and you can access a lot of the reprints there. Mark, yeah, US 6, I am obsessed with that road. It's a very unusual road. It seems to go no place on purpose in some places. I've driven it in some parts in Nevada. I've driven most of it in Utah, Colorado. I've driven it in Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And haven't got much further east on it yet. Pacific Coast Highway, that's a good one too, yeah. US 83, Bill, that sounds familiar. Where does that go? Yeah, you're exactly right, Ian. It's the people on Route 66. And it becomes an international family. I mean, I could just spend hours telling you stories about people I've met on the road, and then we go to Europe on speaking engagements, and it becomes a family. It just really does. 191, very good. Yeah, Pontiac, Illinois. That's a place you can spend a day or two. Jim, you're being too kind. 3 days on Route 66 in Illinois. Yeah, I think you could easily spend a week just in Illinois, and especially you put in a few side trips like New Salem, so a site associated with Abraham Lincoln, kind of a living history museum, and you throw in a few little side trips like that, and you could tie up a week pretty easy. Texas to Canada. Well, that definitely piques my interest. I know that some of the adventure is not the same as it was in the 50s and 60s, but one that I have always wanted to do is follow US 93 and from the Mexican border all the way up to Canada, and then pick up the Alcan Highway and come back on the ferry down the coast. Well, folks, we have run this a little bit late. I hope you don't mind. I'm always glad that we can get together, and I sure don't want to wear out my welcome, but it's always good to get together and share some adventures. That's what it's all about, shared adventures. And mi amigos, I want to thank you very much for your support and for your help, and for getting together, for sharing your stories, sharing your adventures. And I hope we can get together again next Sunday morning for another episode of Coffee with Jim. Invite your friends. Let's make it a coffee party. And until next week, my friends, vaya con Dios.